Hi, folks. This is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on Fat Burning Man, where we talk about real food and real results. Today's guest is actually one of our listeners. His name is Joshua Weissman, and I've met him on a few occasions. Awesome dude. He's a former fat kid, actually, who lost 100 pounds using real food. At the ripe age of 18, we actually recorded this on his birthday. He's already an author and one of the leaders of the paleo movement, so this is really inspiring stuff. Now, before we get to the show, I'd like to let you know that my team and I are completely redesigning my blog and setting up brand new videos, recipe books, and fat loss and fitness resources at fatburningman.com, and they'll be ready very soon. So if you'd like to get these bonuses for free before anyone else, head on over to fatburningman.com and sign up for my email list, and I'll send you all the goods. Really exciting things to come. All right, so on to today's show with Joshua. You'll learn the secret to sticking to your nutrition plan and dodging junk food, why Joshua's nutritionist gave absolutely no advice about nutrition, why chubby kids are the new normal and what we can do about it, and how this incredible young man is changing the world with real food and cooking. All right, let's go hang out with Joshua. All right, folks, today we're here with Joshua Weissman, and Joshua took charge of his life in his mid-teens, lost 100 pounds, put an end to bullying, and now dedicates himself to helping others to do the same with his terrific recipe blog, Slim Palate. How's it going, Joshua?
It's going good.
Awesome. It's also, he just told me before the call, Joshua's birthday, so happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Are you going out tonight? You going to do anything fun? Tear up the town?
I don't know. I think that I'm just gonna relax here and have a steak or something like that.
Nice. That's like the best. So Joshua just turned 18. For those of you who don't know, Joshua, he has just an awesome story. We did a guest blog post or a post about your story a few months ago, and a lot of people just loved it. It's powerful stuff because I think a lot of us can relate to feeling awkward and uncomfortable and not really sure of ourselves and who we are and who we want to be, especially in our teenage years. And you just turned 18 years old, and you're dramatically different from who you were just a couple of years ago. So can we start with that? Can we start with basically who you've been your entire life and the choices that you've made and how that's changed today?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, I think maybe between the ages of roughly 8 or 9 years old, I kind of started drifting out and away from, obviously my parents can't control everything that goes in and out of my mouth and what goes on because, as you get older, your parents are going to start letting you explore and do stuff on your own. And so, I would hang out with my friends as a kid, and we'd go to we'd go to the fast food places and whatnot. And there was no problem for the first few years. And I figured, they're eating it, so why not me?
Yeah.
Of course, I'm going to be doing whatever my friends are doing. And so I pretty much did the same thing as them. I played a lot of video games. We went out every once in a while, but I would say there was less inactivity than there was activity.
Yeah.
And we ate a lot of fast food really poorly, and I slowly started to become overweight. And it wasn't really something that I saw as a problem. I never really realized it until people started making fun of me, and then I was like, wait, what's going on? I didn't know that there was a problem. I thought I was always the same. I didn't really think anything had changed.
Yeah.
And progressively, as I got more and more overweight, the ridicule and the harassment kind of got more and more pronounced. And then I kind of started to hit me, and I was like, oh, well, something clearly isn't right in this situation. And I think right around 14 or 15 was when it was like its absolute worst, because once I started to realize all these problems, I tried different things. I tried, I don't remember the names of them, but like little frozen packaged meals that are supposed to be healthy for you, and they're calculated calories and all that. And I ate those, and that didn't help. And I tried, personal trainers. I went to doctors. Obviously, the doctor was like the least helpful out of all of them, surprisingly.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
Yeah. And so I did that, and nothing was working. And then around 14, I kind of just gave up trying to fix it. And that's when it was my worst, and it was really bad, and a lot of depression. And then there was sort of this moment of enlightenment, I guess, at 15, where I kind of stopped being so analytical. Like I was just analyzing every single thing and trying to be really perfect about it. And I was trying, oh well, the government says to eat, this much and this many whole grains, and why is this not helping me? And so I kind of started reading into some other things. I read some different books, and and I kind of came to the conclusion that if I just sort of shift my eating to real food rather than going straight to the frozen foods aisle for the Slim 100 or whatever, um, that's when I started seeing changes. So I read up a little more. I read up on some books. One of the books was, I think, that taught me a lot. And granted, I don't really support 100% everything that he says, but it's called, I think, the Belly Fat Cure by Jorge Cruz, and he talks about insulin and carbohydrate consumption. And I started monitoring that, and then that's when I sort of realized, well, it's easier just to eat vegetables and bacon and not really have to worry about the fat. And I started actually eating more fat. I moderated my carb intake, and I really started eating a lot more fat, and I was a lot more conscious about where I got my food, and
Yeah.
it progressed more and more and more. And then eventually I lost over 100 pounds, and I think I learned not only a lot about how to eat, but I learned a lot about what is good and like nourishing for your body.
Right. And that's pretty powerful stuff, and so rare, especially at your age. I mean, in this world that we live in today, you being overweight, growing up, being a teenager is, you might have been bigger than other kids, right? But like, it's still pretty normal. Like most kids who are your age these days aren't like strapping, athletic, slim people like
Right.
they used to be, right? It's like, it's kind of the norm that you're a little bit soft or pudgy, but you were just like kind of on the bigger end of that scale, right? And so that's where the
Right.
ridicule came from. But usually where that ridicule comes from is insecurity in the other people as well, because I'm sure, if they're carrying a little bit of extra fat, especially being a teenager, it's really, it's rough on your psyche. So how have you, let's talk about how psychologically you were in a place before, and that's kind of who you were, and you realized that you were getting ridiculed and stuff. Um, what does it feel like to be a fat kid?
It's pretty horrible.
Yeah.
It's pretty. I mean, to be honest, at the same time, and I'm absolutely not saying that it was the ridicule that made me completely change my mind, but I think that played a big role in noticing that it was there.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I thank all the people who said the things that they said and all that, but it definitely steered me in the right direction in a way, and it was a big slap in the face. So to me, being a fat kid was really depressing, and it was difficult. If they didn't say anything, I would have found out one way or another. Specifically, since I mean, I was having trouble going up the stairs,
Yeah.
and I was getting winded just going up the stairs, and my friends would go out and play basketball or football or whatever, and I would be winded, and I'd be like, all right, I gotta relax for a second. So um, along with the sort of depressing feeling, it just feels like you're lacking something as a person. Like you don't know what it is, you can't really identify it, but there's something that's missing, like a human link that's just missing. Like you should be able to do all these things. Why are you not doing them?
Yeah.
So even if there wasn't the ridicule, I feel like there would have been a specific point, but it might have just been later that I had realized it.
Yeah. And so, did you start exercising at the same time as you were playing with your diet, or did that come later for you?
That actually came first before I even started dieting.
Okay.
I tried because I went to a nutritionist like right off the bat because we lived in California, and so I mean, there's nutritionists everywhere, and my
Trip over them in California.
yeah, and my parents knew so many nutritionists, so they're like, oh well, we'll just take him to a nutritionist, and they can teach him everything he needs to know because we don't know everything. So the first thing that they told me, ironically, they didn't say anything about nutrition. They told me to go start exercising. So I I exercised myself into the ground.
Wow.
Like I was just a kid, so I did everything I could to be active. I mean, I probably rode my bike as hard as I possibly could, uh, at least 6 hours a day. I mean, I was like, and I was just a kid, and I
Jeez.
was like exercising than some of the athletes at my school. So
Hmm.
I was exercising more than them. Uh, and that wasn't working. So that's when we started focusing on nutrition, and that still wasn't helping. Uh, a lot of it was, I don't know if they thought because I was a kid I could handle it or not, but it was a lot of fruit and there was a lot of like smoothies and stuff like that. Which now that I look back at it, I think I remember looking it up and there was a smoothie. I would always go get like a medium smoothie
Hmm.
from one of the smoothie joints, and they didn't sugar it up a lot. Uh, Granted, I mean, there's not really a reason to add anything to it, but they didn't like add a cup of sugar to it. But I looked at the nutrition facts anyway, like a few months ago actually, and it was like 80 grams of sugar in
Wow.
one smoothie, and I was like, that's ridiculous. And I was, having that after every workout, thinking like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm having this workout, having this healthy smoothie, and I didn't even like them that much.
Really? Wow. And it's like drinking two sodas.
Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah. And that was like every single time I worked out, and I was wondering why nothing was happening.
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean, that's so typical, right? But let me just get this straight. So you went to a nutritionist because you were like dramatically overweight as a teenager, and the
mhm.
nutritionist said, "Go exercise." Like
Yeah,
no
yeah.
nutrition advice
You need to be more
essentially.
active. You need to be more active. You're a
Wow.
kid. Your genes can handle what you're eating. You're eating just fine. Just go be more active. You're clearly not being active enough.
Would you say that you were eating a lot back then, and that was making you fat, or was it something else?
I think it was. I I was eating a lot at a certain point in time, but when I was originally kind of starting to realize, like age 10 and 11, and that's when it wasn't its worst, I wasn't eating a lot. No, I was eating poorly though. It was a lot of fast food, a lot of processed carbs and stuff like that. It wasn't a lot of food, but it was a lot of carbs.
Okay.
Like it was a lot of carbs and it was a lot of sugar, like a ridiculous amount of sugar.
So, what would a typical day's worth of eating look like for you then?
Um, well, in like my worst position or kind of like the middle.
I would say like the average of you growing up and like becoming a teenager, which is, it's probably not that you probably didn't gain, correct me if I'm wrong, like 30 or 40 pounds in like a month of eating poorly or whatever. It
No,
was like a gradual thing, right?
it was very progressive. Yeah, it was very, very progressive. Typically, typically it was really sporadic because
Yeah.
a lot of the time, being a kid, it was like whatever I could shove into my mouth in that general area. I didn't really
Sure.
care what it was.
Yeah.
So, um, come to think of it, I probably wasn't really getting adequate protein at all. I don't think I really ate that much protein at
Hmm.
all. Not that I'm saying that that's any correlation. I'm just saying, uh,
It was
not
carb heavy.
eating a lot of like bread and a lot of pizza. And I think pizza was like my favorite thing. That was a big one for me
Yeah.
was pizza and McDonald's, Burger King. Pretty much if I didn't have time or didn't want to like have food at home because my mom she's southern, she's a southern cook, and she cooks all the time and she makes, just because she's southern doesn't mean everything's chicken fried steak,
Yeah.
FYI. But I'm just saying, like, she did really good home cooked meals, even though they weren't technically paleo. They were nourishing and they weren't horrible.
Yeah.
But I you know what, I as a kid growing up, you really don't always feel so accustomed to real food. For some reason, I was a lot more drawn to, my friend would be like, hey, we're gonna go to Burger King, you want to come with us? I'd be like, yeah, I want to
Right.
go,
Yeah.
and would go. So yeah, really it was probably at least 60% fast food in comparison to how much I had home cooked, and that's just a guesstimate.
Yeah. Interesting. And so let's see. So is this a fair question? Like, did you have a moment where you were a normal kid and then you became like a fat kid?
I've actually thought about that a lot, and I can't really remember, and it kind of sucks, but I can't really remember the point in time that I remember being a normal kid. I just remember the fat me, like when I was a kid. Every time I think about myself at a younger age, I can't really think about anything other than when I was fat or when I was overweight or when I was getting made fun of. And that's what kind of drives me, or drove me, I guess, to start eating healthy, is because I was like, I can't remember any point in time that I wasn't overweight. Even though there was, I think that it was just so, that kind of that point in your life where everything's just perfect because you're just a kid, you know, you just do
Yeah.
everything. It's awesome. You pick up your toys, you play with your toys. And because it was really the point in time that I wasn't overweight was from when I was born to like age 7 or 8. And I don't really remember anything from there. So
Okay.
everything that I can recollect was when I was a fat kid.
Interesting. Did you eat school meals?
I did. Actually, yeah. Actually, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Now that I think about it, if it was, yeah, it was maybe 10 to 20% of the food that went in my mouth was home cooked, because my lunch and breakfast, or well, actually, maybe my breakfast, I guess, would count, but always my lunch was school lunch. And then my dinner was either fast food or was home cooked. So most of the home cooked meals that went into my mouth was breakfast,
Okay.
and not lunch or dinner because
Yeah.
of school.
Gotcha. So what did a typical school lunch look like for you?
Pizza,
Pizza.
pizza,
Like every
and
day or?
I mean, almost every day was pizza day, so I always went for the pizza. If it wasn't pizza, then it was like chicken tenders, or chicken tenders, or the, what's it called? It was like Asian chicken. In other
Yeah.
words, it was like sugar laden chicken
Yeah.
cubes, chicken cubes. I would say breast, but I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Who knows what that is? But did you take like health class while you were growing up around those times? Did they like teach you about how to eat or what nutrition was or anything like that?
Um, I did last year.
Oh, okay.
That was the first time I took a health class,
Wow.
and I had already kind of met a lot of the that I had already lost all the weight at that point.
Yeah.
Last year I wasn't overweight. I had already lost the weight.
Okay.
And I knew a lot about. And when I say a lot, I knew a lot for my age about
Sure.
nutrition. So whenever they would like, they pulled the projector on and they put up the food pyramid. And ironically, when he did that, when the teacher pulled the food pyramid down, I don't know what came over me. I could have just kept my mouth shut. I don't know why I did this, but I looked at him and I raised my hand and he was like, I'm not in with the lesson, but do you have a question? And I was like, no, it was more of a statement. And he's like, okay,
He's
well,
like, uh-oh.
yeah. And I was like, well, that's wrong. Like, that's not right. That doesn't make sense. And he's like, what do you mean it's wrong? You don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean it's wrong? And I was like, all right, well, I just don't understand how they can emphasize that they want the bulk of your calories to come from this when, ever since this was introduced, obesity and heart disease and all that has skyrocketed through the roof. And they still advise this. I mean, I thought we were past that. And he
Yeah.
was like, how do you know that? And I was like, well, I lost over 100 pounds. And then so he was like, okay, wait. We got to talk about this after class. So we went through the class. Then I went up to him and I talked to him about it. And he was like, you may be on to something. And I was like, okay. And that was that. It never came back up in class. So
Wow. That's really cool. Good for you for bringing that up. That's
it was a really interesting situation because there were kids in the background that were like, kind of like, oh God, this kid's not very intelligent. He's arguing with the government right now.
yeah.
But it's like,
Get used to it.
yeah, I felt really weird about it. I've never done that before. So that was I don't know. That was a significant moment that I had some clarity. I was able to say something to somebody about it, and that was kind of interesting.
You know much more than you think you know. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting to see his response because I thought that right away he would kind of ignore that I had even mentioned that, but he seemed relatively interested, and he did seem that it seemed like he knew that there was something. I knew something. It wasn't just I wasn't just spouting words out of my mouth. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so interesting. I remember in I believe it was my 7th grade.
health class, my teacher was teaching about nutrition, and same thing, like pulled down the food pyramid, and she was obese. And I remember thinking, like, I didn't say anything, but some of the other kids did. They would make fun of her for being obese, and I just thought that it was like, I remember, kind of remarking to myself. I think I told my parents too. I'm just like, because my mom is a nurse practitioner, and she always was really interested in food and health and that sort of thing. I'm just like, Mom, like, why is the person who's teaching me nutrition obese? Because I'm like asking her questions, and at that point, when I was growing up, I had some baby fat for sure. When I had a similar moment at like 11 or 12. I remember my dad. He said, "You have the genes. In our family, we can easily get fat." And he said, "You're about to, like glide into puberty, and this is the moment where you need to decide, are you going to be fat or not?" And I remember those are really like, that probably comes off as worse than it actually was for me at the time. Like, I didn't take it that personally, because like you said, when you're that young, you don't really think about it that much, right? But I knew that I wanted to be an athlete, and I wanted to be like really good at whatever I did, and I loved Ninja Turtles, so I wanted to do karate and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, fat kids don't do karate. But that kind of stuck with me, and I know that was something that was ingrained in me, and probably still is. But it's so interesting. So can you tell me a little bit more about the person who was teaching you kids nutrition? Like, what was his background?
He was a coach.
Okay.
I guess that I can see working, a coach as a health teacher. But the thing is, in the class, some of the material, actually no, all of the material was pretty off. The only stuff that I didn't have anything to disagree with was either something I didn't know about, or it was just standard, like, the heart pumps blood, and everybody knows this, and
Yeah.
there's not going to be much to argue with there.
Uh-huh.
But or at least as far as I know. But there were numerous times that I just had to. It was so bad with some of the stuff that they were teaching. I had to like tune them out. I had to tune them out, and I couldn't listen, because I was like, this is gonna stress me out so much right now, and I could just like feel my heart rate increasing, and it was actually stressful to me just to listen to him, because it was like, oh my God, he is telling all these kids all this stuff. And then after the lesson, they're all chattering back and forth about how they're going to be healthier and eat more whole grains and up this and up that. And then all the while, they're all getting older, and their metabolic rate that has been, like on overdrive lately is not on overdrive anymore. And they're all kind of starting to get a little bit pudgy, some of them. And I'm not, trying to talk crap or anything like that.
Sure.
I'm just saying, like, it's clear that they're not as their metabolic rate is not as superior as it was, 3 years ago. It's not, because they're all getting older. They're all almost adults.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was actually another video that he showed, and it was actually talking about obesity.
Okay.
And it was talking about how it was a problem, and I was like, okay, all right, we're on a better slope here. I'll listen to this one. And we were watching the video, and it was actually, it was like almost like a documentary type style, and they had a camera in somebody's house, and they were trying to lose weight, and they're like, oh, we're trying really hard, and they were trying to make them look all sad, and they were all, it was all depressing and gloomy and dark, and they eventually started talking about nutrition after they got past their background, and they went to their nutritionist, and they're like, so this is our go-to healthy meal. It's 2 slices of toast with margarine and some orange juice. And I was like, oh my God, no,
Yeah.
don't put that in your body. And so they were talking about how not only they didn't even mention whole grains in this. They just mentioned eating as many carbs as you can and eating as low fat as you can. And when I heard that, because granted, I knew what was bad, and I knew like what to eat and what not to eat. But when I heard them suggest that to the people that were like, they're all like gloomy in the eyes, and they're like, well, just make sure that you eat a lot of carbs and no fat at all. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they would say that.
Yeah.
I can't believe that they would suggest that. And And they're still teaching this to kids because that was last year. So
Yeah.
I know that they're still teaching this.
Wow.
And by the way, it was funny because the video was like the old 70s videos that like zoom in and out really fast. And they've got that weird noise in the background, like the wham, 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 wham. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. So it was that outdated too. And they're still teaching stuff from like the 70s in terms of nutrition to kids now.
Yeah.
So that's going to continue just passing on unless they change the curriculum, which you know how long that takes. That's not going to be an easy move.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because that's kind of when they started teaching nutrition as a field, especially to kids, was in the 70s. And if you look at a graph of what happened to America, especially kids included, as well as adults, it's just like the obesity rate, for those of you watching on video, goes like this.
Yeah.
And those of you who are not watching on video, it goes pretty much straight up. Like, we didn't have a whole lot of problems, as it turns out, in terms of obesity or even heart disease and a lot of these things that we assume to be a side effect of eating too much fat. We didn't have any of these problems before we stopped eating fat, and started worrying about it so much. And so that's fascinating that they're still showing the same stuff that basically caused all the problems that we have all today, or at least a lot of the problems. So eating, it's also worth commenting on this part. I've mentioned this in a couple of other shows in my presentations, but I looked at the diet of sumo wrestlers who are trying to put on basically as much mass as they possibly can, a lot of fat as well as muscle, and basically what they do is the same exact thing that's recommended by the government and nutritionists who are teaching kids,
Really?
which is to eat as little fat as you possibly can and as many carbs as you possibly can. And that basically gives you the sumo wrestler physique if you're exercising a lot. And if you're not, then it gives you like just basically obesity. That's a prescription for obesity. And some people, with different body types, especially when you're younger, some of them can get away with it. But most people, as we're seeing all around us, really can't. Let's go in this direction. How about when you see a kid who's overweight today, do they come to you for advice? Like, is it pretty widely accepted at your school that this is something that you've done, or is it just kind of like behind you and no one really cares or worries or even knows that you've lost 100 pounds?
Not everybody knows anymore because it's senior year, and the majority of the student body now is us. The only people that would know me is the seniors. Everyone below us are new. So not anymore, but when I did lose all the weight, it happened really fast. It was like a year and a half total to lose 100 pounds. So that's pretty fast.
Yeah.
So you could think about it like.
So you also lost 100 pounds while you were growing, right? Like, I assume you probably got bigger at that time. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that might have contributed to how fast that I lost it, because I was growing at the same time. But I mean, I know it was the diet adjustment too, especially. But anyway, you think about it like you go to school for like 4 or 5 months, then you take about 2 weeks off, 2 weeks to 4 weeks off for, winter break and stuff like that. And then go to school another 4 or 5 months and then take summer off. And then you get like 2 months off. So it was almost every single time that we would take that break and then I would come back, people would be like, they wouldn't even recognize me. They literally did not even recognize me. I would pass up my friends in the hall and I'd wave at them. They look at me and be like, I don't know who that is, but okay.
Yeah.
And eventually people started realizing, why I was looking different, and I explained what happened. And it started getting pretty well known around the school that I had lost a bunch of weight. And pretty quickly after I had lost pretty much most of it, and I think I had hit that 100 mark especially, I think that number right there kind of really triggered something in everybody's brain.
Yeah.
But it was weird because people were coming up. It wasn't just overweight kids, but I mean, it was kids and kids that wanted to gain weight, kids that wanted to get healthier, kids that wanted to. It was mainly kids that wanted to lose weight. But whenever I see a kid that's overweight, I kind of feel overwhelmed with wanting to help them, but I never really there's not really an approachable way to do it without seeming like I'm pushing myself on them,
Right.
or I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. If they want to fix it, I've kind of just come to the conclusion that they can either, really it all comes down to how badly you want it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of self-discipline, and if you want it, you're gonna find a way to get it. If you want it, you're gonna find a way to get it. And if you don't want it, then or if you do want it but you don't want it bad enough, then you're probably gonna try it for a little bit, and then you're gonna drop off and forget about it. So there's got to be a certain point of wanting it, that you're gonna really put forth that effort that doesn't keep you straying from your path or anything like that too often or anything like that. But I did get approached by a couple of friends who were overweight, and they asked me some different questions, and I tried to explain it to them, but through my explanation, you could kind of, they'd say, yeah, no, that makes sense. I can do that. Okay, I'll do that. But they never did, though. And they never corrected it. And I'm not going to, go up to them. So what did you eat yesterday? I'm not their nutritionist. I'm not going to play that with them. If they want to stick to it, I recommended the different books and stuff like that so that they could do it on their own. Yeah. I just kind of gave them a brief explanation, well, are you eating this, and this? Oh, well, yeah, I eat that all the time. Well, okay, that's the problem. You need to stop drinking soda every single day, and you need to not, eat 20 chicken flautas when you go to Taco Bell or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that they got the message, but they just didn't want to commit.
Yeah.
It was too much for them to commit to. And I think that is the problem with the majority of the kids that are obese nowadays is it's a really long ride, and it's a really, really humongous commitment. I mean, think about all the relationships that go in and out of high school. I mean, they fly by. They last like 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm talking like at least a year of commitment.
Yeah.
Something. So I think that it's a little bit overwhelming for some of them, and I think that they just kind of push it out of their brains to avoid the stress.
Yeah, and I would imagine, especially being a teenager, when everyone else is eating whatever they want, pretty much, and food is a social thing, it must be really hard when you know that going to a pizza place, for example, is going, it's not going to align with like who you are and who you want to be, which means you have to like not hang out with your friends or go and like not eat something or get a salad. And I mean, I'm a guy, and when I first started this and eating this way, and I would go out and not eat the nachos or the chicken wings or whatever, my guy friends would eat me alive. And I was in my 20s, so we're already like way past the teenager thing. But I can't imagine what it's like for you, when food is this social thing, you're at school eating your lunch or whatever. If people don't know that you've lost 100 pounds and they're just like, who's this kid eating weird stuff? What is that like? Can you kind of walk us through what it's like to be a teenager and eating in this weird way that no one really gets or agrees with?
You have to just not care what anybody else says or thinks. You have to completely ignore it. You have to be able to push through that initial sense. Because I mean, I know everybody has it, that initial sense where it's like, oh God, everyone's looking at me, everybody's thinking all these horrible things about me, and then it's just like a long list that runs through your mind. You have to shut that off.
Yeah.
And stop thinking about that, because as soon as you do, it's going to be so much more enlightening, and you can really like take a minute to breathe, and you can realize, like, I'm doing this for myself. It's not for them, so they're not relevant to this. Who cares what they think? This is about me. This is not about them. So if it's weird that they would even care what I'm eating right now.
Yeah.
So that's what I would think about, and I would just eat anyway.
Right.
And sooner or later, lucky for me, I eventually kind of took on the persona of the healthy kid at school, the healthy eating kid.
Yeah.
That was incredibly relieving.
Okay.
Because they just, oh, he's healthy. He just eats organic, He's like a food hipster. Which is exactly
I've never heard that before. That's hilarious.
The healthy food hipster of the school. And it worked out great, actually. It worked out really well. And I was pretty much, I don't know, it was like people saw it as like almost like a taboo, like, ooh, that guy's so cool. He eats so healthy all the time. Look how dedicated he is to eating healthy. I wish I could dedicate myself to eating healthy like
Dude,
that.
that is so cool. Good for you.
So it worked out really well for me. I just had to kind of manipulate it in a way that made it look like I wasn't just doing it to lose weight and become healthier.
Yeah. Like, watch me eat this stick of butter. Ha ha. You know?
Yeah. Granted, I'm like at home slathering everything in butter and then dousing it in olive oil or something like that. But I bring like a gigantic, like, and completely ridiculously sized salad, just so that everybody, like a flamboyant salad that everyone could see, because eventually once they had realized that, they're like, oh, there goes that healthy kid with this like ridiculous salad bowl that he brings to school that has like a retractable knife on it and all this interesting stuff. And so it worked out for me, but I don't know that would be the case for everybody. I think I just got lucky in that case.
Well, it worked out. I don't think you got lucky at all. I think it worked out because you dedicated yourself and basically were gritting your teeth for a year and a half and have experienced all the amazing things that have happened because you dedicated yourself. So it's you've learned some really important lessons, and I think that you have so much to share with the people around you just through your example by doing that. It's definitely not luck. You are kicking the world's butt because you decided that you want something, you know what it takes to get there, and you're doing it. But what would you so you said that you need to want it, right? Like if that kid who's overweight comes up to you, you need to want it for sure, but you also need to follow the right advice. So what do you do about that? Like what some of those people out there who are watching this video or listening to the podcast might even be watching this show for the first time, so they don't even know how to lose all this weight. So what is the advice that you would give to someone who wants to lose 100 pounds?
Well, I think that it varies from person to person, but at the same time, I think that there is a kind of consensus of bad eating right now with obesity. And I'm not the one to demonize carbohydrates straight up. Yeah. I'm not going to say, carbs are bad invariably. I don't think that that's true. I think that they can be useful in certain situations, depends on how active you are and how much body fat do you have on your body and stuff like that. And I think that the more overweight you are, the less likely you're going to be able to metabolize a buttload of carbs in one sitting. So I think the first thing that someone could do is probably eliminate all of their like liquid sugar drinks like soda and stuff like that, because that was one of the hardest things for me to do. Surprisingly, I thought that I was never going to be able to give up soda. I mean, it was literally like a drug. It was so hard. I literally broke down and cried about it several times.
Was it all sodas, or was it like one in particular? And was it regular or diet?
Anything that was sugary and fizzy that I could drink.
Okay.
Anything. And I just thought, like, how am I supposed to do this without soda? Water is so boring. It doesn't taste like anything. I actually remember every time I would have like dinner or something, my mom would be like, "Oh, Josh, I made you water." I'm like, "Mom, I got to have something sweet with this because this is salty, and I got to have something sweet with the salty to balance out the flavor." So I had to have, some sort of sweet drink, whether it was a juice or a soda. And giving up that soda was really difficult. But once I finally got past that and I knew I could give it up, then I realized, okay, now I can kind of take the next step. So once you've kind of eliminated those really sugary soft drinks, I think that'll start that pedaling sort of to get you moving in the right direction. And then after that, start looking more towards like reducing your carb intake and stuff like that. I think that a lot of people want to jump straight to low carb, like ketogenic low carb, something like that. And I think that's great, but I think it's too confusing to start someone off.
Right. That's a good point.
So like I started moderating my carbs where I was still eating within the first like 3 or 4 months of my weight loss. I still successfully lost it eating. I wasn't eating, gluten-free or paleo yet.
Yeah.
And granted, I wasn't losing it as fast as I was until I started doing that, but I was still losing because I was moderating my carbs enough. So I think the point really is reducing those carbs.
Yeah.
And especially sugars, because you can handle most people can handle carbs better than they can handle sugar because, one goes to muscle stores and then the other goes to your liver glycogen. And that's a tiny little depot that's not going to let much storage. So, yeah, I mean, watching your sugar and your carbs it's everything.
Yeah.
And maybe, slowly messing with the numbers and decreasing it over time and see what does best for you. If you feel like crap at this level and nothing's happening, then don't do that. Maybe bump it up a little bit. Okay, you feel good here. You're losing at a steady pace. Stay there for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also over time, I actually noticed a stall for a while when I was really low carb, and I was like, "What's going on? This should be like go train 100% of the time."
Yeah.
And then I started introducing more carbs, and then it picked right back up. So I think it was like that really long, that point in time where I was like low carb, nothing but low carb. I mean, I didn't even eat a banana for like a year. I'm not even kidding. I didn't touch anything sugary or carby at all. It was just like non-starchy vegetables, meats, healthy fats, stuff like that. And I never touched anything other than like a raspberry, blackberry, or a strawberry specifically. Nothing else. Not a banana, not a mango, nothing.
Wow.
And then after a while, my body sort of started to crap out and was like, okay, well, you're not going to lose any more fat at this point in time. And then I started introducing more carbs, started eating potatoes and stuff like that. And not every day, but after a workout or something like that. And I think that that boosted those leptin levels back up to let my body know it was okay to continue going. So like I said, it's more of a experimental thing. You got to play around with it and see how it works with your body.
Yeah. That's brilliant. We're coming up on time, but I want to make sure that we save some time for you to talk about your, basically throughout all of this journey, you've also become an amazing cook and photographer, and you have a new book coming out. You have a wonderful blog at Slim Palate. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? What does your cooking journey look like?
My cooking is pretty much, it's all over the place right now because I'm kind of just trying to, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I loved cooking.
Yeah.
It was only up until I started like becoming obese that I kind of disconnected from that because I was disconnecting from food in general. So I guess after I had gone through my journey, I sort of reconnected with food and I started dabbling back in my cooking that I did when I was a kid. And right now, I really, really like my current cooking quota for the day usually is anything braised. I don't know. Probably because of the weather, because it's so cold.
Yeah.
But I really like messing with like different regional type cuisines. I really like Asian. Anything like Thai. I use a lot of fish sauce in my cooking.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, like in my book is a little bit all over the place in terms of recipes. It's more of like a real food book rather than a specified cookbook like, Chinese food or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's got all kinds of recipes. It's got different ethnic, classic ethnic foods. It's got some classic recipes that a lot of people know, like ossobuco. A lot of people know that recipe.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, kind of my take on it, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's also some of my own recipes that I've come up with, like there's like a lamb shanks recipe in there for like coffee and ancho chili braised lamb shanks, and there's
awesome.
They're so good, man. They are so good.
Those are the ones that are all over my desk right now.
And there's another one for like steak and Brussels stir fry, and I tried to make sure that there was a good balance of everything in there. There's a good balance of meat to vegetables. Like there's actually, I think, more vegetable recipes than meat recipes, but that wasn't exactly my plan per se. But there's a lot of versatility in it.
Cool.
So
that's great. So where can people find your blog and your book?
Well, you can find my book on Amazon right now. It's up for pre-sale under the Slim Palate Paleo Cookbook, and there's also links to it like all over my website, slimpalate.com. And a lot of the time on slimpalate.com, I usually post about 2 times a week, but lately I've had to bump it down to like 1 post a week because of the cookbook and everything. It's been kind of hectic, so
totally slacking off.
Yeah, I'm slacking. I am slacking. I've been taking so many pictures, I don't even know what to do with my camera anymore.
You turned 18 today and you have a book. You're not slacking off. You're totally crushing it. You have inspired so many people already, and you're going to change the world. And I want you to know that. So we're out of time, but thank you so much, Joshua, for coming on. I would love to do this again sometime soon. And obviously, I think that a lot of people will appreciate your story. So check out Joshua's blog. Please pick up his book. You're going to do amazing things. You already are. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thanks, Abel. I enjoyed being here.
Awesome. We'll talk to you soon.